Hello and welcome to Service Above Self. My name is Ann Osborne. On this episode of Service Above Self, we will once again be looking at the vocational service side of Rotary, which involves business professionals sharing their expertise with others. Today we will be speaking with Jeff Davis, owner of Nuking Street Pest and Wildlife Control out of Enfield, Connecticut. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. How do I find a good pest control professional?
There's a couple of ways. The first is definitely check with the Better Business Bureau because they'll have all that listing online now, whether somebody's licensed or how long they've been in business and if they've had any problems in the past. Also, states have a registry of all licensed technicians, either through the Department of Agriculture or the Department of Environmental Protection. They're also online. Most states have it's the Kelly Blue Book kind of registry for licensed professionals, and they should list what type of license those folks have. So you want to pick somebody who has a license in that particular pest that you're having issues with.
Okay. What is integrated pest management?
Integrated pest management, or also known as IPM, is a multi-pronged way of dealing with any kind of pest issue besides just using chemicals. A lot of folks just want you to go in and spray a house or throw out some poison for mice or whatever. But there's a lot of other mechanical controls that people can use. One is sanitation, cleaning up their property. Also exclusion, where you close off any holes or entry points for pests getting into the building. Others are just having placement of using the right kind of pesticide or cleaning agent to keep pests from going into certain areas of harborages, making sure there's no food like stuck underneath the cabinets or whatnot that they can get to.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other tactics you can use besides just using chemicals, so that you want to basically use a program that's going to work, and that's one thing. It's also part of the green movement is if it doesn't work and you're throwing in a whole bunch of stuff that's considered green, it may not be technically green, sort of like using mothballs, for instance.
Right.
You can throw a bunch of mothballs into a closet and it would effectively get rid of things like moths or rodents, but if you go in there all the time and you're sitting there breathing those fumes in, that could be harmful to your health. So that's technically not green because, one, it's destructive,
right,
and it's
right.
not always effective. So proper placement of that, you want to use that kind of thing in an enclosed area. Some people throw it right out in their lawn and expect that to make every animal go away, and it doesn't work like that. So.
With the internet access, everybody's got the internet. Everybody wants to find out things on their own. What's the difference? Why should I contact a professional when I can go online and put in my problem and 20 websites come up with how to do it on my own with store-bought items?
Sure.
Why should I call a professional?
Well, absolutely. Well, there's a few reasons. One, you have to consider the source of where you're getting that material from. Chemical companies are in the business to sell their chemicals, so they can promise a lot. And also, there's a lot of programs out there that have websites up there for just about anything, and home remedies or whatnot, or say, it could be something like, well, I throw a lot of bleach all over my house and I have no problems. That may not be, may be illusory correlation on how that works.
Right.
And then, like I said, you have to consider the source. If it's not something like a company, like a school who does research on these kind of things, or a government agency that regulates and does research, sometimes you have to consider: are they trying to sell you something, or is it just some guy really knows what he's talking about? Also, what a big problem that I see just in my own industry is that there's folks that will buy an over-the-counter chemical and just start spraying away. So
right.
A can of Raid will, it will kill insects if used properly, but it also kills people if used improperly. The biggest single thing is that people have to read the directions on these materials, and I mean they're required by the EPA to list all directions and what kind of dangers that those things can impose upon people. And also on the labels, it tells you what you can use it for. So if it doesn't say cockroaches on it, and you're spraying all over your house to get rid of cockroaches, it may not be the correct material.
Right.
I see folks that get hysterical because they have bed bugs, for instance, and whenever they just buy a can of Raid or a bug bomb and just light off 20 of them in their home or underneath their mattress, and if you don't read the directions, like bug bombs, for instance, are flammable in most cases. So
Right.
if you're not turning off the pilot for your burners or unplugging your refrigerator that cycles on and causes a spark, you could blow up your house potentially.
Wow.
So hiring a licensed professional who does this all the time, they're pretty current with what you can use and what you can't use. They're going to know, the amount of dosage that you're supposed to use, what's going to work most cases in any given scenario, and can adapt to those changes. And also they're going to be regulated by the states so that they should know what they're doing.
Right.
So, so I think the biggest thing is just it's just a matter of you're going to be dealing with somebody who has a lot of knowledge with that material.
That makes sense.
And,
that makes sense.
Do it yourself is great for saving money, but there's sometimes when your health is involved, and then you cause a bigger problem for yourself. That's going to cost you more money in the long run.
Right.
So.
Okay. I personally had a previous experience with an organization that I know very well. They had a major problem with bed bugs. Mm-hmm. You did come in and help them out with that. How do I, if I have them, how do I know I have them? And if I do have them, how do I prevent them from coming into my home again? Sure.
Well, first off, as far as identifying if you have the problem, being able to visually see them is, a dead giveaway. A lot of times bed bugs hide in places where people don't even expect. That's one of the biggest problems with them, is they tend to hide during the daytime and come out at night, so people don't see them. So seeing places around furniture, such as the seams on your mattress, that's a big place where they like to hide, or behind headboards, couches, anything with fabric they love to climb on. Even furniture that's right next to where you sleep could have them, so nightstands, dressers. And they go to the bathroom just like everything else, so if you don't actually see a bug itself, you could see their fecal matter on mattresses. It's usually in the form of little black spots all over creases and seams of the mattress. And also they cast off their skin when they grow, they molt their skin. So you could see what looks like a shell of a bug, and you may not actually see one crawling, it's just that's a leftover skin.
Right.
And then also you could see them in clothing. If you have a pile of clothing right next to your mattress, they can be in that. And then there's also the bites. A lot of folks have reactions to bed bugs biting them. Not everybody. There's a lot of folks that have no reaction at all. So a lot of times you come to a place and the wife is getting eaten alive, and then her husband's not getting eaten at all.
Yeah.
And they think that she has a rash or some other malady, and goes on for months, going to the doctor, and they recommend all ointments or whatever. And and then come to find out, you see a bug crawling across your bed one day, and oh wow, you got bed bugs.
Yeah.
So there's that issue, that there's a lot of things that kind of simulate bed bug bites, and like taking new medications, or having a really high level of intolerance to whatever allergies. Let's see. And then there's a actual psychosis called delusory parasitosis, which is the feeling that you have something crawling in your skin and you're itching all the time, and
yeah.
And that's something that it's hard to, as a pest professional, to tell somebody that I don't see anything. You might have some kind of condition.
Right.
It's hard to tell somebody. I mean, even for the Department of Agriculture, they go into people's homes and they test, and they don't find anything, but the individual will swear that they have some kind of infestation of some kind.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of issue. So and then also there's ways of bringing in. There's dogs that are trained to smell out bed bugs if you think that you have
Really?
them. Absolutely. They are about 98% effective in finding bed bugs, and they're very quick about it.
Wow.
So it's the same kind of training they get for police dogs, drug sniffing dogs, bomb sniffing dogs. There's dogs that are trained to find termites and other parasites or insects. Those actually do work. They're very effective. They save a lot of time and money for a lot of folks. So anytime you go in and you have a person go and visually inspect and not find anything, that's probably a good way of testing whether or not you have an issue. Mm-hmm. There's monitors that they have out there on the market now. They used to have one called Night Watch. It's a machine. Basically, it generates heat and it gives off CO2 and has a human scent lure to it. And that's kind of simulate a person sleeping in bed. And basically, it attracts bed bugs into a little reservoir. They fall in and can't get out.
Oh, wow.
And I think they've been having problems with just getting that unit back up and running because they've had issues with the CO2 canisters or
Right.
The machine itself isn't that great. So it's not a 100% reliable tool. And it's basically just one aspect of doing treatments. It's just locating insects. It's not going to control them. There's a couple other ones that are out there. There's one that's called Insect Interceptor. It's basically a dish that goes under the leg of each bed post, and it basically lets them climb up into the dish and not get out.
Oh, okay.
So with bed bugs, they don't have hooks on the ends of their feet like flies do. So it's very hard for them to climb up on surfaces that are really smooth, such as plastic or smooth metal. So they get captured in these dishes, and you can check every morning and see if you see little bugs in them, and that's a super easy way of checking out whether or not you have an issue.
How can I prevent them from coming into my house in the first place? I mean,
Okay.
if I keep my house clean, if I keep everything organized, and
Sure.
how does that happen?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing is people need to become educated. The media has a lot of stories about bed bugs lately, and that they're getting worse. And you see them on the news almost nightly now, of people getting sued for having bed bugs in their property, and their tenants are upset about it. And the biggest thing is people need to become educated on how they get around and that they exist. There's a lot of folks that don't believe they exist. There's folks that don't believe that you can actually see them.
I can vouch for it.
And you can actually see them. They're about the size of apple seeds, almost that shape. The really small juvenile bed bugs are hard to see, but you can see them with the naked eye.
They almost look like a tick, don't they? Similar?
I would say, it's similar mode of action as far as them trying to get into somebody's home. They wait until somebody comes along and they catch onto their clothing or luggage, and they just hitch a ride home with you. And that's usually how they come into people's homes. The only difference is that, unlike ticks, one is their ticks are arachnids, and bed bugs are insects. Also, bed bugs require feeding multiple times. They don't latch on and stay there for a long period of time. They do individual feeding. But kind of like ticks, they do require feeding to grow to the next stage, which is called an instar. So they do have to feed like everything else. But once they're done feeding, bed bugs go off and hide off, like in the furniture or in baseboards or whatnot, as opposed to ticks that they hang on for a while and then fall off. So, and let's see what else. As far as ticks, bed bugs hitching rides, they can get on people's furniture, through their luggage, and bring them home and climb off into their furniture wherever they sleep. You could have luggage at the airport, which I've seen covered with bed bugs, and it goes into a plane with everybody else's luggage. So there's the potential for them to, just run it through planes. And they've actually had planes that they had to ground in, I think at Heathrow Airport, where they've had to go and fumigate a plane just because there was bed bugs in the plane itself. I've seen them in taxi cabs, movie theaters, New York City has had them in places like Abercrombie and Fitch in their
Yeah.
store in the dressing rooms.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're clean or dirty, they can go to anybody's place. So even places like the Waldorf Astoria has had problems with bed bugs.
Yeah.
So they're not attracted to filth or any kind of like food matter, kind of like cockroaches are, but they are attracted to clutter just because that's a place where they can hide, is in places that have a lot of clutter. And it also makes it more difficult to treat because you have to look for where
Right.
they're hiding. So
Right.
reducing the harborage, helps with treatment itself. And then let's see, there's
Well, we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
When you start with Rotary, good things happen. Rotary's ordinary people working together to clean the environment, stop disease, and accomplish other extraordinary things.
Severe weather can destroy a home in seconds. Have a kit so you're ready for any emergency. Develop a plan for what you and your family will do before disaster strikes, and stay informed during severe weather any way you can. It can be the difference between losing your possessions and losing your life. Visit weather.com/ready for more information.
In 1985, Rotary International committed to a goal of ending polio worldwide. Very soon now, after immunizing over 2 billion children, the goal will be achieved. Rotary, humanity in motion.
Welcome back. We are here with Jeff, talking about pest control. Jeff, I don't hear a lot of about companies that are in the area. How did you pick this as a career choice?
Okay. Oh, well, it kind of fell into it, to be honest. I was going back to school after being in the military to do computer science, of all things. And I started working with my father-in-law, who actually started doing this probably about 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he needed help on the side, and I was like, okay, well, I'll help you out while I'm doing this. And it was funny because professors at school kept on saying, well, you'll make 50 grand a year and, doing this stuff. And I was having a hard time with math and stuff like that. And I was like, that's not too exciting. 50 grand was like, I'm almost making that part-time, doing this kind of work.
Right.
So I think the money was the reason why I decided to get into it. I changed my major to history, so I took something I liked instead of something that I needed a job for.
Right. Right.
So I started out working for my father-in-law, and he pretty much just gave me a couple of accounts to manage on my own, and it was kind of one of those things where you kind of sink or swim. He wasn't sitting there being my boss. He was
Right.
just like, here, these are your accounts, you deal with them, and. It's one of those situations where, if I didn't produce, then, I wasn't going to make any money. So you learn very quickly that way. And I kind of thought about my school experience. Nobody was teaching me how to be an entrepreneur. And I kind of looked at some of these guys that were teaching business and whatnot at school, and I kind of figured, well, if these guys really knew what they were talking about, they would be doing their work for free, and then, they would be doing that kind of work.
Right.
So,
right.
So I decided to go into business for myself full time several years back, and I think as far as learning everything I needed to know, it took a long time. I had to find out all the regulations for the states that I work in, and there really isn't. There's a couple of schools out in pest control. So Purdue, they have a good program.
Mm-hmm.
Cornell has a good program. UMass Amherst has a pretty good program.
Oh, okay.
There's people that study entomology, I think, get into the pest control, and then there's people on the flip side that go into pest control and say, well, I need an entomology degree or something, or biology. I didn't do any of those, so I just jumped right into doing doing the actual work. And it took a long time to just become recognized for the work I did. Most of it was word of mouth. There's a lot of networking companies out there for online businesses, such as like Service Magic, I think a lot of people are familiar with. Even Craigslist, I mean, just advertising through Craigslist.
Right, right.
And then it's just one of those things where it leads to one thing leads to another, just good word of mouth. And I mean, there's really big companies that you could, I guess, go and learn from, but I decided to stay away from that. I'd rather just do everything on my own and be in control of what I do instead of being an employee. So I think it's a little bit different mindset to be an owner versus an employee. And it was something that really appealed to me, being my own boss. So if I decided I'd wake up in the morning and, you know, I really don't feel like going to work, I could do that. Probably not a good idea.
No.
But the problem with bugs and wildlife and rodents, they don't take a break, so vacation time is very minimal.
Right.
So, I mean, there's trade-offs. So,
Why are treatments so expensive?
Well, for one thing, is referring to just bed bug treatments or general treatments. Bed bug treatments are pretty expensive just because they're highly time-consuming. You have to stay on top of what kind of things are working because bed bugs can gain a resistance to a lot of materials out there. There's certain classes of materials that they're just almost immune to. So in the case of DDT, which has been illegal for many years, since the 70s, bed bugs are pretty much immune to DDT. I mean, it might work on contact, but it also causes a lot of harm in the environment and to people. And back when they were using it in the 40s, people had the spray can. They were just spraying in their cabinets and everywhere in their homes, and you know that caused a lot of problems for health and the environment. So it's actually been regulated out of the system. And then when bed bugs kind of reemerged about 15, 20 years ago and started coming back, that was no longer an option that was available to use for treatments, and it wouldn't work anyways. And so part of the cost associated with that is using materials that do work, and there's very few chemicals. I mean, there's a lot of chemicals that do work, but if you have to use them correctly. So you can't just buy a can of Red and spray on top of a bed bug and say, oh, I'm done, you know. You have to put it in the right places according to label instructions. There's a lot of treatments out there as well. There's steam treatments, which steam works pretty much 100% of the time as long as you know what you're doing. It's a very detailed oriented type of thing. You know, it takes hours and hours of work to do that. There's a lot of different formulations of chemicals like sprays. There's some powders that you can use.
And I would imagine that if you have, if you try to do quick things and inexpensively, you're going to have to do it over again.
Right, and that's what a lot of folks try to do with the bug bombs. They buy a bug bomb and they think, okay, it says bed bugs, I'll light this off and see if that works. And they've pretty much found that there's not enough chemical in the bug bomb first off, and then pretty much it chases bed bugs into hiding places that the bug bomb is not going to penetrate to. And then if it's in a multi-family situation, you know, you could push them from one unit to another. So you want to do treatments in a way that it's not going to spread. And then also, if you have one unit that's highly infested and you're the owner of a multifamily, you might want to get all the other units that are adjacent to that one treated just as a precaution. So there's more added expense. So, and then there's heat treatments that they have out now, where you have a generator hooked up to big heating elements that blow heat into apartments or homes, and the heat has to be up to about 118 degrees, and you have to be careful with that, not to set off water sprinklers and things like that or melt the vinyl windows. But even that, you have to use a lot of time, and there's a lot of manpower as far as lifting heavy equipment into people's homes. So ants have changed, and they migrate north now, just to be in more conducive environment for them. So it's the same thing with brown recluse spiders. They just did a special on TV recently where they're looking at their home range has actually moved up northward. So people up in the Northeast are saying that they get them. They don't really have them here, but they are migrating closer toward the Northeast, but it's not here yet. And usually they just hitchhike on like shipping material. But there's a big outbreak of stink bugs around Pennsylvania, Midwest areas, and they actually eat a lot of fruit and crops and whatnot. So they're destructive in those areas, and they also give off a really bad smell when you crush them.
Wow.
So when they're in
So you don't
homes,
want to step on one.
you don't want to step on them, and because they're all over the food and stuff, they're really afraid of what kind of material you can use. So they're trying to come up with chemicals that are not going to be as poisonous to people on food. Like dino-2-furan is a type of chemical. It's a low dose. It's actually the first chemical that has a reduced rating by the EPA, and that's something that's being considered for use in crops. So for treatment for the stink bugs. Let's see. There's we mentioned the ants, and then there's a lot of wild boar down south.
No, I don't think we have to worry about that.
We don't have to worry about that up in the Northeast, but that's something that is really out of control in southern states. Because they multiply very fast. They do a lot of crop damage and structural damage. They just reproduce so fast. And they eat everything.
And you wouldn't think that they were in the United States, but apparently
they absolutely are. And they've caught some very large ones.
Wow.
So.
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for coming in today to educate us and give us information on the world of pest control. And I want to thank you for watching Service Above Self. Until next time, as always, we encourage you to go out, find a worthy cause, and lend a helping hand.